We are back with Every Passport Stamp self-quarantine happy hour. We have two travelers on a Russia theme. Anna Zavialova is calling in from tomorrow, all the way in Moscow, very late at night for her. Thank you. And then Michael Runkel in one of his bases in the world in San Diego. Thank you both for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Both of you are very active in Every Passport Stamp. I've noticed Michael's recent posts about some very remote parts of Russia that I'm fascinated on, and so I wanted to kick off with that theme. Yes, and yeah, Anna, I think if you could speak even louder, it's still a little bit hard to hear.
Okay, let's try it. I'm so
Yeah.
jealous. I heard about it when you told me about it, and I was so much jealous. I have never been in Yakutia yet, and in this place, how to call it, like the coldest place in the world. I hope you enjoyed it, by the way.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic trip. It ended a bit bad, but not wanted it to end because we were in a snowstorm in Anadyr in Chukha. But apart from that, the Road of Bones, absolutely spectacular. Really, really much better than all of us expected it to be.
So
And,
did they have winter?
Say it again?
Did they have winter?
Yeah, it was up to minus 45 degrees,
You know,
minus 45, minus 50 Fahrenheit. Yeah, for them it's warm. For us it was slightly cold.
Yeah, here in Moscow we haven't had winter this season at all.
So Anna,
still normal.
From your perspective, Anna, somebody in Moscow, growing up in Moscow, tell us about this region that Michael just visited and how remote it is in your experience or how remote it seems to even somebody from Moscow.
You mean Yakutia?
Yeah. Where is it for people that haven't heard, and how remote is it? How rare is it for someone, even a Russian, to visit?
Well, actually, it's part of Siberia, and it's like hugest part of the country, the continent, and it is really very remote places, especially if you do it by land. And as far as I understand, he did from Chukotka by road, right?
Chukotka has no road.
Okay,
you only can fly to Chukotka.
Yeah, so you did a flight to Anadyr, then you returned to Magadan.
No. We were supposed to fly from Magadan to Anadyr and then down to Chabarovsk. But Khabarovsk was there was this big snowstorm coming, and so it was closed down. But there's only one flight per week, so we were stuck there. And then the second day, we still didn't get any answer if there's ever a plane coming up, because the airport also closes down for the weekend. So for us, we were supposed to probably stay for another week. And it's extremely expensive there, and we all had flights out of Russia, basically from Khabarovsk. So one was going to South Sudan, one to Germany, San Diego. So for all of us, we had to go to Khabarovsk. But then there was this flight not coming for us, and then there was one other flight coming by chance from Moscow. So we all said, we were at the airport and said, okay, we have to just try and then go.
So
and
me, how far these regions are? They are so far that the connections are very poor over there, and the funniest
there's no connection.
Almost no connections. And if they have some connections, it's not like in USA. All connections they have, they do via Moscow. So if you need to go, let's say, to Magadan, to Anadyr from Magadan, first, mostly you must come to Moscow, then come back to Anadyr.
Exactly.
Everything in Russia is goes via Moscow. Like they say that all roads go to Rome. In Russia, all roads go to Moscow.
Yeah, I had to basically fly around the world. I was at the border to Alaska, and to get to Los Angeles, I basically had to fly completely around the world. I flew Anadyr to Moscow, Los Angeles, and that's like altogether 24 hours just flying time. Only way to get there. Yeah.
did you like it?
Well, Anadir is a unique spot to visit. The Yakutia is fantastic. I found it absolutely great. We had a very nice group. They were all friends of mine. So I connected them together, and then we really had a very good understanding with each other. And we were just like, because you're really stuck in cars for days because it's a long road and you're always driving on the ice, and you're really driving in extreme harsh conditions. So you really have to have an understanding for each other, and you have to understand well, because you just cannot have any egocentric person there. That's really difficult. So we were just all stuck together, and we were having a lot of fun sitting in our, it's a Russian minibus, going from Yakutsk first to Lena Pillars, and then up to some gulag camps, and then to Magadan, like 9 days altogether.
And what did you like more, landscapes or people?
Say it again.
What did you like more, landscapes or people?
Well, I'm photographer. Me, I definitely like the landscape a lot, but also we were meeting reindeer breeders. So we
Mm,
went to see these guys, and they were like all dressed in the best costume, in their like local fur dresses, and then we
yeah.
were going on a sledge with deers. That was a very, very nice experience. But although all the ghost towns, there's a lot of old Soviet towns which all are abandoned now, especially between um, Ust-Nara to Magadan, was in the Magadan area, which has highest density of gold mines in the world.
Hmm.
And so in Soviet times, there's like one after another, but most of them are abandoned now. So you have one town, you have like 12,000 people, and it's completely abandoned. There's not one person living there. It's basically rotting away in the middle of nowhere. That was interesting seeing it.
Oh, Anna, there's a few that have pointed out that S7's hub is Novosibirsk. I was going to say,
Oh, yeah,
is that also a hub
I
in
know.
Russia? So,
Yeah,
not
the
all
S7,
roads lead to Moscow.
that's true, but it doesn't work always as you need, because the flights do not they do not have flights, let's say, every day. So well, sometimes it's much more easy to come to Moscow and then come back, either than to go to Novosibirsk, wait, or take special dates. I also tried to well look for some routes. Actually, yeah, in Siberia, S7 is very, very good airlines to cover some of it, but it doesn't work always. Still, maybe it's a Siberian guy, or I don't know.
I've used them because for those of us in frequent flyer programs, British Airways and American Airlines partner with S7, and the award prices can be very good.
Yeah, true. Siberia, by the way, S7, they did very good promotion right now. It is called Stay Home.
Hmm.
So they just introduced this service yesterday. You go to their website, a special website, where you check in every time, and you get 100 points, 100 miles for next trips.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
great. And I'll have to share that with all the points
yeah,
travelers.
that's true. And they want to get access to your real location, so they really check whether you stay home or not.
Oh, there you go. Interesting. Yeah, it's a good nuance for the points travelers like me that S7 tickets typically don't have fuel surcharges in their fare construction. So for award tickets, those they don't exist, so they're not charged. But Aeroflot, a lot of the cash price of tickets typically are coded as the fuel surcharges or the carrier imposed surcharges, and so award tickets on Aeroflot typically have a lot of cash price, almost as much as just using a regular cash ticket plus the miles price. For many of the programs Aeroflot partners with, so I've used S7 more for my travels when it's been possible on miles, and then cash tickets for Aeroflot. Now, Michael, I wanted to ask. I mean, you're of course a famous photographer, and when I recently went to Antarctica just for a day trip, a friend said, who's into photography, said, keep in mind, photographic equipment does not perform well in the cold. So you were in extreme cold. You're obviously an expert. I'm sure you have tremendous kit, and from phone all the way up to probably very expensive equipment. What do you do in such cold for your gear to get the photographs you're looking for?
Well, normally the gear we had, even at minus 45, it works perfectly. Yeah, which are really important is that your battery much, so you all charge battery full, have or every access to electricity, because it's not the cycle of a battery is much going faster down than if you have it in regular temperatures.
Okay.
That's one thing. And the other thing is, what always is a problem when you come out from the cold in the warm because of the condensation, especially with a lot of humidity, then your lenses will always be completely hazy. Not really use when you come in. So normally to have to about like 10 minutes to get your lenses, the glasses, to acclimatized to the different temperature out or inside, depending on where you go. These two things are really important. And a third one, I was drone of bones, and that was care. So I didn't fly new of drone. I just came to dash before. I could not fly it very much. I probably never had been flying in those temperatures. So only flew up, and the battery at some point, like I would say after 2 or 3 minutes, it goes down so fast, and the whole system basically is not set up for the drone, and so normally I always was able to land it, but one time it suddenly, even far away from us, I could not steer it anymore. Went down. It did like emergency landing, and then we had to all taking our big boots and searching it in a little forest. But fortunately, after like 20 minutes, we got it back.
Fantastic. I didn't even think about the drone. Yeah.
Yeah, drone is even difficult because if there's a little wind, you have the wind chill, then the temperatures are even worse. And I only had a DJI Mini, not like the professional normally use, because in India and in Bangladesh you're not allowed to normal regular drones, and so the DJI Mini is pretty new. It just came out in November. It's really a good drone for starters, but of course they're not built for those temperatures. They're not built being out at minus 30, minus 40 degrees.
And you talked about you put this trip together yourself. What some of the, I mean, I think even for experienced travelers, if you're not a Russian speaker and not used to operating in Russia, going off even the more conventional places can be quite challenging. What did you find was useful to? Is this just tons of WhatsApp calling, messaging, finding people? How do you even put something like this together?
No, I honestly, I mean, first of all, I find Russian people extremely friendly. Every time I go to Russia, I have just the best experiences. Even in Kamchatka, in Caucasus, wherever I go, we really have just great experiences. And nowadays, my big is you just buy a local card, especially if you go to Central Russia. And I drove with two friends October through 21 oblasts, starting in Moscow, going to Smolensk, down to Rostov-on-Don, Kalmykia, Astrakhan, Volgograd, all basically the south central of Russia. And when you have a local SIM card, you can use Google Translate pretty much everywhere because the coverage there is pretty good. And you just use Google Translate. And we had that one situation, and I was driving the whole trip. So, for me, I'm most fearing the Russian drivers, but not traveling there, not the people. The driving is really a different story. But you really just, whenever there's a problem, and we had one time the problem that our car was towed away for no reason, that we on a Sunday morning, and we had no clue where it was. So we used Google Translate, basically with a receptionist to the car to get the papers, to get to the police. Then we had to discuss all in Google Translate about 2.5 hours with the police guys, waited until the captain was coming in the station. For fun, but
Yes.
just translate very quickly well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, but
Yeah, and so in the end, men are still like there's quite a lot of, but the people on the street, every time we meet, they're just nice and friendly. Wherever I've been traveling, and I've been traveling quite a bunch, and I always had like just very nice and good experience with the
yeah,
officials, but the people on the street.
I have one remark.
Your volume is dropping again, Anna. Yeah.
May I have one remark? I just about how friendly people are and things like this. As far as I understand, well, once I found this information in TripAdvisor that Russians are not friendly, and well, I thought why? It's a weird question, why? And I realized one thing. The only thing is why Russians are not friendly. They look not friendly because they do not speak English. When you come them on the streets and want to ask them some questions, they would like to help you, but they don't know how. They become shy because of it. You see,
The language is very often a barrier in many countries. That's a lot when people don't speak the language, they're getting shy, and they rather have like a defending way of looking. But reality is most of it, it's really just the language barrier. If you can break it down with something like Google Translate, or you speak the language, is even better.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, you really just have very good experiences. At least that's my experience.
yeah, I understand. I mean that young people they speak English. Most of us we studied English at school, but as for our parents, grandparents, they mostly studied French, German, and they really do not know English at all. Even my mom, despite the fact that my sister she lives in U.S., she goes to U.S. It's 2 times per year. She doesn't know English at all. She speaks Russian with normal grandkids and no, just yes, hello, and that's all. Bye.
I've had a lot of those grandmas ask me for the directions when I'm walking around streets in Russia, and my wife says it's because I have naive American eyes. And she says I look like I can be asked for directions.
Yeah, and I try always to learn languages as well. So for me, when I was starting to go to Russia, like more often on the former Soviet Union countries, I started to learn Russian. I actually went to a Russian language school, and then I used to learn at least like the minimum. It's a very hard language, but I always think that when you have a like a basic knowledge, you can read the numbers, you can read the letters, all the alphabet, and you make the effort to speak to people, it always pays back. And I travel since many years, and I find it, of course, it's a bit more a burden when you learn another language, but it always pays back. I find it's absolutely worth the effort.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge payoff, as you said, just to being able to read Cyrillic and sound out a word. It can make
Hmm.
translation easier. You can some words you can just magically figure out, oh, that sounds a lot like English or whichever language you're speaking, or at least at least being able to form questions better, just figuring it out and looking at a menu, right? You see salad, and then you can figure out, oh, okay, this is the salad section or soup. I mean, these kind of things you can get some clues and that can help as well. So how many, but each of you, how many of the oblasts or political units have each of you been to?
You mean regions?
Yeah, however you categorize. I don't. There's republics of this and that. I'm
Yeah,
ignorant of exactly how to refer to them all.
yeah. We call them subjects of federation. It's
Okay.
85 according to constitution. 3 cities, and the rest they may be like region, republic, oblast. Oblast is similar to region but slightly different. Some of them are named by native minorities, like in Yakutia, Yakutsk region, because Yakutians like national people who live there. Others
Mhm.
are called by name, especially in western part of Russia. like Moscow region, Leningrad region. It's close to Saint Petersburg. Volgograd region. That's also by the name of Volgograd town. So it depends. Mm, but
And you've
here
been to how many of them?
85 altogether, together with three main cities. So we have three cities which are included in this subject of federation: Moscow, Saint Petersburg, and Sevastopol.
Mhm. And how many have you been to?
I've been to 48.
Oh, wow. And Michael?
I honestly don't count them, but I think approximately about 60. But I can't.
You
I'm
are
not a counter, so.
Well, I know you told me to look through your Facebook post going back to August, so you did highlight, I think you said the only Buddhist territory in Europe. Is that
Yeah,
what you call out as a special highlight?
Kalmykia. Yeah, it's very interesting. Kalmykia is a very very interesting place, but my preferred place in Russia, Kamchatka. Kamchatka is for me the absolutely top place of all provinces and oblasts I've been to. That was absolutely spectacular. We were 2 weeks basically going up and down the volcanoes and camping out, seeing all these grizzly bears. There's one place in Kuril Lake where there's up to 1,500 grizzly bears on just this one lake. And you have to fly with a helicopter for 1.5 hours from Petropavlovsk down there, and it's absolutely breathtaking. It's really, yeah, it was just one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Did you do it in summertime or wintertime?
Yeah, in August.
Oh, okay, I see. It's
Mm.
the thing here that many places they are very spectacular, both in winter and summertime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was right now was wintertime, and
You
then this one
see-
before was summertime.
Okay, so Michael, I apologize. I think we lost most of your answer for that question. If you could just repeat your answer about starting with when I asked about the Buddhist Republic.
Okay. For me, Kalmykia was very interesting to see that because these are descendants of Genghis Khan. When he was coming into Europe, and so that was a very very unique place, very similar looking to Mongolia. But I said my highlight is Kamchatka. Kamchatka, we were 2 weeks camping out, climbing down every day the volcanoes. There's lots of different volcanoes. Has one of the highest density of volcanoes in the world. And we flew with a helicopter down to Kuril Lake, where there are up to 1,500 grizzly bears or Kamchatka bears on one spot roaming around because the lake is just filled with salmon. And they're just coming for having their feast there. And we were there at the high season, and it was absolutely really fantastic to see that.
Now that's a region I've wanted to visit myself. I haven't been cost wise 2 weeks. And I understand it involves a lot of helicopters, as you said. What would you be budgeting for a minimal trip there to see the significant sites?
Well, I first of all, I would, if someone goes there, I would definitely recommend not to go there only for 3 or 4 days.
Mhm.
That doesn't make sense because there are no roads. You have to go off-roading. You have to get. They use 4x4 Kamaz trucks. You have really the permafrost soil there, and the Kamaz trucks are the only trucks actually who are able to drive through the permafrost soil in summertime when the top is very muddy.
Mm.
So I would say at least 12 to 14 days you need to have a proper visit,
Mhm.
and it's not that expensive.
Is
What
it?
I generally do is I contact local tour operators. Very often
Mhm.
I take photos for them, so I don't have to pay for it. But my friends, where I organized a trip for it, they paid about for 14 days. I would say in dollars about $2,200.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
It's not
I would have expected maybe 3, 4 times that. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes
yeah,
Russians
but
pay much more to go there.
Yeah, but it depends really how you go, because if you just go camping, I have to say that the helicopter ride is different. The helicopter ride costs another 700 US dollar, $800 now. But the drive or basically the camping, the 14 days, that is not that expensive, and it's an incredible experience.
And can you do much with you? It sounds like you don't need to take the helicopter rides to have a great experience. Is that correct? Or?
It is, but to see the grizzly bears, that's a unique spot. There's no other place in the world similar with with such a high density of grizzly bears than Kuriel Lake.
I see. And Anna, have you been to Kamchatka as well?
Not yet, unfortunately, no. As I said, I mostly visited Europeans and Siberian parts of our country. As for Far East, I've been only to Amur region. It's not as popular, not as famous for travelers. And yeah, it's yeah. As the main thing is that you really need a lot of time to go there. Really, just 10, 14 days. You cannot cover those regions very quickly because they are huge and they have a lot of jewels. I mean, like nature, people, everything, just to explore it. Yeah.
I remember when I went to Lake Baikal, which is tame by your standards, but I remember a guy I talked to about he would go and he would run cars out of the Japanese cartas out of Vladivostok and drive them to different places to deliver them. And he said, in that part of the country, there aren't roads; there's just directions. And I thought that was a great summary of the opportunity and maybe the challenge. Well, let's head a little bit west. And Anna, when you recorded your Global Gas Counting Countries interview, I re-listened to it, and you highlighted your trip to Afghanistan. And Michael, you were recently in Herat, and so I think there's another one where I'm curious both of your takes on your trips to Afghanistan have been when, and then also Michael, your current experience.
Yeah, I did. I guess I did Afghanistan maybe like 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was, in a sense, a spontaneous trip. To be honest, recently all my trips are spontaneous. So if I get visa, I go, and I
Hmm.
quickly prepare my trip. Um, I had to negotiate with the consular here in Moscow for about a month. I came to them one time, okay, need a visa, then second time. So, well, I spent much more time to visit them and to get visa. And when I got visa, to be honest, I was surprised. Wow, I'm going to Afghanistan. I haven't expected it from myself, but to be
Hmm.
honest, right now you have much more interviews and let's say, reports about Afghanistan in every passport stamp, for example. In those
Yeah.
times, no, yeah. I struggled inside myself whether to go by myself or go with a guide. Finally, I preferred to go by myself. The reason was that, well, still, it's much more safe, in my opinion, over there to travel along, not in groups. Because Taliban, they prefer to attack groups, no matter
Hmm.
local groups or not local groups. They are not interested in individuals. So I couch there. I found quite a good couch surfer. The funny thing is that I've met him only one time at the airport. So because when I came there, he was out, but he said, "No worries, my driver would come and um, let you go to my place." Then I left
Mm-hmm.
to Vandermeer Lake when he came back. And when I returned from Vandermeer Lake, he was going to China or somewhere else. And I messaged to him, "Well, you go to China. Where are you now?" "I'm going to the airport." "Okay, I'm here in the airport. Let's meet at the airport." And we met with that guy at the airport. But in general, Afghanistan impressed me a lot. To be honest, I felt the depression of people who live there. On the other hand, they are so beautiful and friendly. And I even did one maybe rare thing, but when I went to Mazari Sharif, Mazari Sharif, I think, in the border with Uzbekistan. Um, I didn't know where to stay, but when I came in Kabul, I went to Omar Museum, talked to local people, and they said, "Oh, you go to Mazari. We have a person in Mazari. He would host you. This is his phone. Go and call him. Go and call him right now from the museum." Okay, I did it, and he was working at I don't know how to call this organization, but they do the mining of Afghanistan.
Hmm.
That's why he was friend of people who worked in Omar Museum, and he let me stay at his house. His wife was out, but all his kids were in. I
Hmm.
stayed in the room of his kids.
Hmm.
He showed me around Missouri, and he gave me very super experience I would never get. I went to mining places in Afghanistan.
Wow.
So
Now, what did you experience that I, as a male traveler, and when I went to Afghanistan, didn't experience?
sorry.
What were you able to experience as a woman in Afghanistan that I never would have had an experience on my trip?
To be honest, I didn't feel anything wrong traveling as a woman in Afghanistan.
Hmm.
Mostly they look at you mm, as a foreigner, and
Hmm.
they just want to communicate with you like with a foreigner. The only one issue I had with police in Kabul, I took a picture and they started to persuade me. So, but later I understood that the main reason for them was to talk to me. So I
Hmm.
went to a restaurant and ordered food. They entered the restaurant. I wanted to have food without blankets, without hijab and things like this. And I said them, okay, you have issues with me, just wait outside. So they waited outside the room. Then they knocked the room. They tried to open it to look at me. Finally, when I finished my food and went out, they asked me the only one question: just don't be alone on the streets.
Hmm.
So this is one. Well, as far as I understand, the main issue for them was just to talk, to communicate, just to spend time.
Hmm. Fantastic. And Michael, you were just there a few months ago in Parat. I know you highlighted. What did you find in your experience, and what photos are you most proud of from the trip?
There were so many of them. It was really, again, one of my best trips I did in my entire life. We were 15 days going through very regions. It was my third time being in Afghanistan,
Hmm.
but this time we were going to Mazar, and then we in Herat. We were like 4 days in Bamiyan, and we also went to Kandahar. And we
Hmm.
were one of the first people to go down to Kandahar
Hmm.
and in the Panjshir Valley. So we really saw very many different things. It was we traveled. I traveled with two friends. Undercover, we had like full beards, and we were wearing the local dresses. So we really were not appearing as foreigners to be there. So when I have a full beard, I pretty much look like a Pashto man. And
Wow.
so we just travel around because, with my camera gear and my drone and stuff, I need to be very careful what I'm doing. So we had local cars, like not any flashy jeeps, like just more like minibuses, rundown cars, but cars where you really mingle in the local car scenery. And that was a really, really good experience because when people saw that we are foreigners, they were not really aggressive because we adapted to their way of
Hmm.
dressing, way of looking. And we really only had just positive experiences there, not one negative. And for a fact, the governor of a province near Bamiyan, he even organized a full one of these horse rallies. They were
Hmm.
fighting with for the dead sheep,
Hmm.
the game, and that was just absolutely incredible. We were like, I had my drone and a photograph. We were standing next by, and all these horse riders, they were so proud to show up themselves, getting the
Hmm.
horses on the back legs, and they're basically riding in each other, and really, really incredible experience. And then going to Kandahar, that was actually something very special as well for us, more for the fact that it's really so few people have been in the main place for the Taliban, and you could just travel there and experience it, and it was actually much easier and much cooler than we thought before we went there. Was everything there was just like one highlight after another every single day.
Mm. And this trip you organized with a local fixer, or
Yeah, with I normally I always go either with my family or with friends, or with more friends when it has to be a bigger group, like in Road of Bones. So used Gul. Gul is very very good guide and tour operator from Afghanistan, and he really made a really great job to get us safely around the whole trip. Really good job.
Fantastic.
So 2 friends and me. We were like 3 people.
Yeah, I remember from my visit, it seemed like hiring a white SUV seemed the best way to paint a target on your back. I think I agree with the idea of having the beaten up minibus. You're just some hippies on the hash trail from the 70s that never got out.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We were at the last night. We were invited in the green zone at the English embassy or English consulate, and there were all these guys from USAID, from German GTZ, and from the British counterpart, and they were like sitting all around this table, and they mostly never leave their compound, never leave the green zone, because for them it's so dangerous. And then we were just sitting in there looking like Pashto people, like all having beards, all wearing the local dress, sitting all together with them. And they were just listening to us and could not believe what we were telling, how we were traveling around there. Because for them it's an impossible thing to imagine. Because the tensions, I think the last couple of years, they have been getting much higher than they used to be like 6 or 7 years ago.
I remember when I went, my guide, the client he had just before me was from the UK, and he said, he joked, he said, no one ever tells their family that where they're going. And he said this gentleman had told his fiance that he was going to Tajikistan, except he accidentally left a copy of his itinerary at home, and so she called and said, "How's Tajikistan?" So you of course have a family, and I've seen you talk frequently about traveling with them. I do not have kids. I've always thought the excuse I would give to my wife if we had kids is that every country has kids, so it must be fine to travel with them. But but it's clearly not quite that simple. So how do you decide which are going to be the family trips and which are going to be solo?
Yeah, that's like when we do these sort of trips, we look what the current security situation in all these countries. So we were almost a month in Myanmar in January. And of course, Myanmar has a bad reputation, but if you know Myanmar, you know that it's only the Rakhine state and the very north of Myanmar which is a problem. So we travel around in all these tribal areas, in Chin state and in Kaya state, where very, very few people, foreigners, ever went. And this was no problem at all. We were greeted and welcomed. We have a 1-year-old or a 10 months old and a 4-year-old, and they were just absolutely friendly and open. It was a bit exhausting at some point, obviously, because we said a lot.
It's like a conversation starter that never stops. You must have gotten tremendous attention.
Yeah. Especially our daughter. She, for her, she was like a movie star, and that at some point was quite difficult. Like because in the Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, the people were just flocking on her. Everybody wanted to touch her. Everybody wanted to hold her in their arms, and that was, we always had to protect her. But apart from that, we all did the whole south of Myanmar, which is still many parts just is halfway closed or halfway open, and we did the whole area there. So they're not used to see any white people. Wow. And again, it was just one day better than the other. Really, last couple of months were very good months. We unfortunately everything came to a lockdown now, but we really had a good time.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to imagine just how diverse geographically and culturally Myanmar is for it's not
Oh
a
yeah.
small country, but it's not a giant country like some of its neighbors. But people like yourself that I followed the travels, I mean, just looking at the pictures, the people, everything changes so rapidly. It's I feel like a bit like Sri Lanka, where you can just you drive half an hour, and you're in a suddenly different landscape, a whole different experience.
Yeah, Myanmar is the last country which is actually really having traditional culture, which is with most of the time is untouched. That you don't find it anywhere else. I
Mm,
was after that. I was now in February. I was in Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland. You know, all the northeastern states of India,
mhm,
and Mizoram receives less than 100 tourists per year.
mm.
But there, everybody is completely dressed in regular Western clothes. So they
Oh,
have no more traditional dresses there, no more ancient cultures, nothing. But
mm,
then you go across the border, where is Chin State, and you see all these women. I took photo of them. It's all the faces complete tattooed with it's called the spider woman because they have
mm,
spider nets in their face.
mm,
They are so incredible. One of them was taking no one, two of them. They were taking a flute, and they
mm.
blew the flute with their nose.
Oh, wow.
Singing, they were basically playing a song by the flute.
Mm.
It was really spectacular to see that, and it's just the border in between. It's maybe 200 miles,
Now,
but is a
you can
complete
cross
different
that border
culture.
as a tourist? Are you able to cross
Pardon me?
Are you able to cross that border with a tourist visa?
Not this border.
Yeah.
There's another border up north you can cross. Yeah.
And while you're in the
Um,
northeast states of India, I've been interested in the World War II sites of Kohima and Paul. Did you happen to see any of those?
yeah, I for this trip was really for like I've been to pretty all the states in India, and these
Mm,
were the last 5 states I haven't been to, and
yeah.
so I wanted to go there because I was in another trip in Arunachal Pradesh
Hmm.
to see the tribal peoples there, and so I thought I could see more of the headhunters in
Hmm.
Nagaland and also
Hmm.
more of the culture in Mizoram.
Hmm.
And so that was the reason, since I was in the region, that I said I'm gonna go and see the last remaining 5 states of northeastern India.
Mm. So of the non-obvious Indian states to visit, what are three ones to tell people to go to put on their map? I mean, they're going to go to the famous tourist spots, but
Now forget that. I would never recommend going to Taj Mahal. That's really,
yeah.
it's so touristy. I would not really recommend. But if you would ask me like
Well, like
three
Bhopal,
places,
I really enjoyed Bhopal as a city. I went there just curiosity about the Carbon disaster, but the UNESCO sites, the pink architecture, the lake, the manageable traffic, I loved it. So places like that have jumped out.
yeah, I mean for me, I definitely my top place in all of India is Ladakh,
Hmm.
the most northern tip of Kashmir, and Kashmir as well. So the most northern part of India. These are really very yeah, untouched and different Indian states because they are more Tibetan like. And I always say, like, if you want to see Tibet as it used to be,
Hmm.
then you have to probably go to Ladakh because it's the Indus River flowing through the main valley,
Hmm.
and you have like eagle nests. You have all these old monasteries sitting on top, and the monks are still dressed in the traditional. Well, it's very pretty there, very nice,
Compared to the
and
experience in Bhutan,
pardon me.
how does it compare to the experience traveling in Bhutan?
I like it much more in Ladakh. The barren landscape is for taking photos also much
Hmm.
more interesting because you have this um, blue river with all the green agriculture surrounding it, and then you have the desert right on top of it.
Hmm.
In Bhutan, the landscape is also it's nice, but Ladakh is much more stark and barren landscape with all these green patches, and in addition, since it's so high up, you have less oxygen and less dust in the air, so the sky is much bluer. So it's also like you have a much more contrasty landscape there.
Now, Anna, have you been to India, or have we been inspiring you for trips there?
Well, I did India once. I did Golden Triangle for 4 days and decided India is enough for me for now.
I found in my India trips, and I've not traveled nearly as extensively as Michael, but I've been a number of times, and I don't know, maybe about a third of the states if I added them up. And I found that's the one place where like every fourth or fifth day I really need to take a break. And usually I just go on my trips. But I do feel like just taking a break at a nice comfortable spot, reading, working, and taking and just relaxing a bit is not something I need many other places, but certainly have felt that way. Um, well, I wanted to talk actually about chilling out, Michael. One of the things in your Facebook feed that fascinated me was I believe it's in Niger that you were a few months ago, and you were posting from a ceremony where people, young men, I think it was exclusively young men, are in the heat and it's a hot place, and they're drinking, I think was it tea, and they're trying to get themselves in a trance to the point where they almost pass out. And I feel like that's a good self quarantine activity, perhaps. So tell us this.
Hold on. You missed the important part.
Yeah.
That they're not passing out. In contrary, this is a festival called Gerevol in Niger, in central Niger, and the tribal people there, the Poil, they are going there because they are all nomadic. So once a year in September, after the rain, they all come up like 2 hours away from the next village in a very remote, really shitty spot. It's super hot, at about 40 degrees in the shade. So they're all gathering together. They bring all their animals. And then the men, they will basically getting all makeup in their face. And for about 3 days, they have as much as possible sex with the girls. And they're also choosing women to get married. It's a really absolutely spectacular scenery.
I didn't see all the posts then. I just saw the guys trying to get in a trance.
Yeah. They're getting into trance, and they're getting they really, you see only the white in their eyes at some point.
Yeah.
And they're just standing there and they repeat the repetitives. They're singing and dancing, and they do it the whole day. And they have 3 different outfits. They do always one in the early morning, at lunchtime, and at nighttime. And then the whole nighttime, they're dancing and singing. And you will really, like in the bushes, you can see then they're just taking the girls down there. It's it's really a unique place, and especially because they use all like natural colors there. So they get all the makeup in their faces, and then they just really dress up to impress the girls. And the girls sitting all together in one corner, and then come all these guys with their camels, and then they're just standing up in line, and some of them they're just getting more and more in trance while drinking the tea and singing in this super heat. And you really, there's always like older guys who have to get them when they are too exhausted and they're getting too much in trance. They have to get them out of the line because they're like really getting in a different world at that point.
Oh wow, fantastic! I didn't think it would go that far. What a spectacular experience to have. And
this is a wild experience. I tell you, this is a very, very wild and super hot experience. I mean,
the heat really would do me in. I wouldn't need to be dancing to pass out, I'm sure.
And then they're all camping out. We were camping there. We were, I think, altogether like maybe 40 people, and you're just surrounded from animals. Everywhere there are cows and donkeys and goats and sheep, and it's you feeling like you're on an animal farm, and your tent is right in between. So the whole night there's donkeys and just shouting around you, and it's really it's pretty exhausting. It's very exhausting.
How did you learn of this place to get a desire to go visit it? Where did you find that?
That was a dream for many years. So I've been to Niger before, and I always wanted to go to that place. I mean, I traveled since more than 30 years, so you're obviously getting a lot of information over the years.
At what time of the year do they have it?
In September. But you were not allowed to go. You were not allowed to go for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years because of Boko Haram. That's the area of Boko Haram as well. And obviously, being a polygamic tribe is not really Islamic, so they had to. They were closing it down, and we had like a couple of military jeeps with full artillery and bazookas with us on the trip for protection. You cannot go individually. It's impossible. There's only one tour operator, a local Nigerian, who organizes it, and all the others you will see they all go through him.
Gina Morelli Mitchell just posted. She said this same group is also in Chad.
Yeah, that's the same guy.
Yeah.
Together.
Gina was also with me on the Road of Bones right now.
Was she? Okay, oh, fantastic. I am envious about these trips. And another one I'm envious of is pictures of these incredible waterfalls. I was thinking they'd be like Guyana, Venezuela, and then they turned out to be in central Mexico. So tell me about them. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's Huarasca Potosi. Also for me, that I had like 2 states in Mexico I haven't been before, and so I was like on a quick stay over in San Diego, and then I said I'm gonna go down for like a week because Santa Cruz, Veracruz, and that area I had never been before, and it turned out to be the Huarasca Potosi. Absolutely spectacular place. Again, another spectacular place. What I never expected it to be. All these waterfalls there are so pretty, turquoise water in the midst of the jungle, and also very few people, especially when you're during the week there. No foreigners at all. If you see tourists there, then they're mostly Mexicans.
And what's the nearest city? You flew into where, and then overland, or?
Yeah, I rented a car, and I flew to Veracruz.
Okay, all right. And I would guess the safety situation is not much of an issue since it is such an out of the way place.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. When the shit hits the fan, it hits the fan. Of course, this is Mexico, but in general, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I mean, there had been an issue when a taxi driver, he hit my car, and then he was running away, and I had to follow him up for like half an hour. Basically, high speed, 140 kilometer. I had to drive to follow him up, and then he just he tried to claim that this is not his insurance, and it was a big story after that. But these sort of things can happen everywhere, you know. And the mafias thing, I mean, or the drug cartels, you very rarely see them. It must be bad luck if you just be at the wrong time at the wrong spot.
Now, of waterfalls in the world that you've seen, what are some of there's many spectacular ones. There, even very modest ones can be spectacular. But what are some that you say make a trip just to see those?
Yeah, I mean, some are very remote. One really comes in my mind because the whole island is so spectacular. Is in Nukuhiva, in the Marquesa Islands in French Polynesia.
Wow.
That's the 3rd largest or 4th largest in the world. That's a very impressive waterfall because it's all a ravine of a volcano. That was really special. The one in Mexico, it's the highest one in Mexico. This is also very nice. But the photos you see, it looks also spectacular because it's shot from a drone. If you would see it in reality, it doesn't look as spectacular. It's very nice, but it doesn't look as spectacular as you see it from the viewpoint of a drone. Drone really makes a big difference. And then another waterfall which comes in my mind is in Misolha, also in Mexico. It's in the very south. Where's Cristobal? In Chiapas. You know, you can walk behind the waterfall. That's quite nice. And there are several very pretty ones in Iceland, especially in the westward.
It sounds like there's a few countries where you're visiting every state or province. Is that true? And which countries are they?
Yeah, yeah. No, I've been to now from Nomad Mania in 1000 and I think 88 or 89 states already.
Mhm.
So I'm not so far away from. I still have like 200.
That's true.
So
You're way beyond the level of states and provinces. I forget about you rarefied 4-digit people and what that implies.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's you have to see. But I also travel many years. You know, I'm not traveling in 3 or 4 years. I travel like 32 years now, and never less than 4 months a year. So obviously, when you travel a lot, you also go back in places and see new places you haven't been before.
Mhm. Anna, what's the place that I haven't asked about from your trips that you would really love to share with people? Your experience, something that was new or different that you'd like them to enjoy.
Oh, many.
Anna, I
But
was asking Anna. I wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah.
He wants me to answer. Well, um, it's hard to say, to be honest. It's like I have several places that I love a lot. Like I like Iceland. I also like Ethiopia,
Uh-huh.
and I like Namibia in Africa. Um, I have several places in Russia which I enjoyed a lot, especially Caucasus, like Dagestan. Dagestan is one of my favorite
What
places.
specifically about Dagestan compared to its neighboring territories?
Specific, they are absolutely different, despite the fact that they are similar to altogether. This is the most populated, let's say, they have the most number of nationalities, small nations in Russia. Like 1,000 plus or something. So every small village, every aul, it's like a nation.
Oh.
So people are different languages, maybe different. That's why they are considered to be, by the way, quite dangerous. They struggle between each other.
Ah.
But on the other hand, they have very picturesque landscapes. What I was impressed a lot, I found an abandoned town in the mountains in Dagestan. So it's really like well, when I posted it, people said that it was Iran, um, but it is like here in my country, and I was surprised a lot to see it. So it's an old town. Now it is abandoned, but it was even I don't know how many years it is, but it was even electricized in Soviet times. They had phone connections and whatever, but it is located so much higher in mountains that it was very hard to reach it. And of course, young people later they just left it. But still, they have a sign for it, and some local people come there to visit it. It is called like Gamasutal or something like this. I was impressed a lot to see it. Mm, Also, here in Russia, I was impressed to know that we have a lot of pink lakes.
Hmm.
Everyone around the world they are looking for pink lakes, like pink lakes in Senegal, pink lake in Colombia,
Uh-huh.
in Spain, wherever it is. And this summer I was surprised that we have several pink lakes in Altai region, also in Volgograd, and even Timor in Crimea, I think. So it was like a discovery for me. I'm looking for pink lakes in different countries, while there are so many of them next to me. Like
No,
really,
I hope you do a post in EPS about the pink lakes of different countries. That's a new one to me.
yeah.
While you were talking about Dagestan, I was wondering. I imagine it's pretty rare even to have domestic tourists in the region. You almost like a foreigner in a sense when you're showing up as a tourist from Moscow coming to the
Well,
region, or
the thing is that they think that we are afraid of them. That we also are afraid of most of Caucasus people from Caucasus.
Mhm.
And when I go there, and not just sorry, not just Dagestan, but also Chechen Republic or nearby, like Vladikavkaz, things like this, they always ask me, "What are you doing here? Why did you come here? Aren't you afraid?" Well, guys, I have same passport as you have. We are from the same country, so why should I be afraid? we speak same language. But that's true. There is some kind of, in one sense, they really have some kind of struggles between each other. They, well, let's say, hate each other, and every, small republic over there thinks that they are better. They are, let's say, has a longer history and things like this. And moreover, in 90s we had several wars with
Mhm.
Chechnya. Um, so well, there is some kind of even people here in Moscow, they ask me, where are you going? Tajikistan? Are you sure it's safe to go there? Are you sure it is safe to go to
Mhm.
Czech Republic? Well, are you crazy? Actually, right now I'd like to. I have prepared next trip to Caucasus, to Ingushetia, and to Kabardino-Balkaria, to see there old owls, to see their nature. By the way, I found out they have even chateau. They have the first winery, official winery in Russia,
Hmm.
like private. It is in Kabardino-Balkaria, I guess. Yeah, Kabardino-Balkaria, and I want to visit it as well. So it's like a castle in surrounded by a lake, but by artificial lake, I think. Uh, but it is called Chateau Erken. Will be
Oh,
fun.
wow. Where in the Caucasus is the food the best? Because it's one of my favorite food regions, but I've not traveled nearly as extensively as either of you.
Sorry, what did you say?
Where in the Caucasus is the food the best?
I guess everywhere on the streets you can find it
I would
everywhere.
I would say I would say in Georgia. I've been all around there as well. I would say in Georgia the food is the best from the Caucasus, for my opinion.
Yeah, Georgia. Well, the thing is that Georgia like to feed people. This is their lifestyle to feed people. You
I,
can
I
go to the
that Georgia's been on my repeat visit list, and I remember my last morning of my visit there, the place I liked the hachapuri the most. I was waiting. I was hoping at like because my flight was I don't know 10 a.m. I was hoping at 7 a.m. they would be in there or something that I could still get one more on the way to the airport, and
wow.
not in luck, but I am very much wanting to go back. And in the Russian Caucasus, I've been to Sochi,
Yeah,
go to Abkhazia, but I haven't been anywhere in the region beyond that.
yeah, but what I'm saying it's just street food. So the best cheese is that the one they sell on street.
Mm.
This is like homemade cheese. Same with bread. The best one is that they just prepare on the street. You can stop on any corner over there and taste something interesting. They also have this what they have in Georgia, like churchela or things like this. Also, if you have an opportunity to taste the local one, I mean the homemade one, it's good for you. But not restaurants, not things like this. Just go by the road and taste what they sell on the street.
If they had all of that available to me in my quarantine here, I would be gaining a kilo, at least a kilo a week.
Yeah, but this is absolutely disadvantage of the Caucasus. If you go to the Caucasus, just
So what?
think about you need to go to gym after Caucasus.
All right. Well, Michael, we'll close on what's the most photogenic place in all the Caucasus?
Say it again.
The most photogenic place in all of the Caucasus.
Svanetsia, for sure. Svanetsia. Svanetsia is one of the most photogenic places all over, like Europe. If you enter that place, that's really like it looks like a fairy tale. It's so pretty. It's only you only through a small canyon, and then it opens up, and it is it used to form a kingdom, and you have all these houses with towers. Each of them is 26 meters high, and they were like fortifications. And then if you reach the final village, which is called Ushguli, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Each house has its own fortification tower,
Mhm.
and in the background is Mount Ushba, and Mount Ushba is 5,000 something meters high, and that's really pretty, absolutely pretty place to see, and all these the horses grazing around and the villages in front. That's for me the most photogenic place
And for those that aren't familiar with that area, it is where?
in Georgia.
in the northwest, I believe, or
Northwest?
It's in the northwest. Yeah, it's bordering Chechnya.
mhm,
It's the all the mountain range, basically
Yeah, it's very far
Chechnya.
to go over there. It's mountainous area, and you cannot reach over there all year round. Just I guess in summer or something like this.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the thing is that those people they are very they well they are one of the most let's say independent people in Georgia. They do not consider that they are Georgians. Well, many Georgians do not consider that they are Georgians. They also have small nationalities all around the country, despite it is small. Um, and as for Svanetia, well, Georgians, they look at them like, wow, Svanetians. Svanetians look at Georgians, wow, look, Georgians.
okay. I wasn't going to make a Russian joke, but you opened the door, so I'll close with when I went to that famous with that church in Kazbegi on the what do they call it, the Russian military highway in Georgia. So it's right up near the Russian border, and it's the scenic one of all the postcards. And this beautiful church set against the mountains, and right beyond is Russia. And I was there, and there were some young Georgian teenage boys, and they didn't speak any English, but they knew a little bit, and they started talking to me in their language, and I didn't respond, and said I don't know, and then figured out I was American, and then one of them turned, he pointed to Russia, he extended one finger, and it turned out he knew one four-letter word in English and the word Russia, and
And
and so
which
that's
one?
what he did, and and then he smiled and waved and was off on his day. So,
Well, you see, well, I can tell you about my experience with Georgia, my first trip in Georgia. What happened in 2000, I guess, 9 or 10. Just the conflict started in 2008.
that's about when I was visiting. I think 2009 was when I was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
You know what happened with me over there. So in those times, borders were closed. Well, I mean, we need to get visas on border. We didn't have direct flights. Had to go there via Minsk. Well, why I went to Georgia, I just saw pictures in the journal of Hulhinkali and things like this. I said, well, I want to try it. I need to go to Georgia to try real cuisine. It's funny. So I went there during that conflict, and while working in Tbilisi, um, it's mountainous also, and I fell down, and I broke both legs.
Oh my goodness.
It happened if you've been there, you know they have some kind of Mother Georgia monument on the top, and well, the downtown it's in the well, this area next to the river, and I was somewhere well between the town and that top, and I didn't know where I was. Both legs were broken. All I could do just to call. Um, my guest house to tell them that I'm here. And they spent maybe 2 or 3 hours to find me.
Mm.
Georgians, in times of conflicts with Russia, they found me. They brought me to a hospital when I had one very bad fracture. They had to somehow turn my bones just to make them good. They put on one of the Russian songs to me, very good ones. Makes no sense, but for us, for all together, they're really very good songs. Well, it would be very it would be very bad for you right now. You would feel a lot of pain.
Mm.
Okay, listen, better listen to this song. And they helped me. Later they spent like 2 or 3 days with me in my guest house. Um, they helped me in everything and so on and so forth. That's about Georgian hospitality. No matter what we feel, what's going on between our countries, still they are very friendly people towards people. They may hate Russia like country, but they always respect people, and they were always happy to see us like people. Well, that is.
Well, that's a fantastic way to draw it to a close. A country that all three of us clearly love, and hopefully we can meet in person there for a celebration sometime, or somewhere on the road. Thank you both for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.